Okay, very happy to have you on ROAPE.net. Could you please introduce yourself and give us a few details of your political background and activism?
My name is Explo Nani-Kofi. At present, I'm the director of the Kilembo Center for Civil Society and African Self-Determination, which is a research, education, and advocacy project, mainly focusing on addressing the issue of a democratic deficit in African society and relation between Africans and the rest of the world, and which also lays the foundation on a grassroots project, a pilot project on what we are calling the Ghana Streets Parliament, which is trying to bring people together in communities as of people so that they can be a pressure group in a situation where there is a deficit in the representation in parliament and government structures. They also build conscientization through action and development through self-empowerment.
Thank you very much. You're a political activist of many decades standing, and one of the most interesting periods of that activism was your involvement in the student movement, and then as an opponent to Jerry Rawlings and the regime that issued from the coup, the second coup in 1981. Could you tell us something about that period from the late 70s, your involvement, and how it was that this military figure came to play such an important and ultimately destructive role in the movements that you're engaged in?
Yes, before entering university, I had been involved in the Student Movement for African Unity, which is a Pan-Africanist organization, being the local president of the Student Movement for African Unity in my secondary school. And so when I got into university, I looked for the branch and I found the Pan-African Youth Movement. But the leader of our group in the university later became a member of the ruling council of the ruling second coup. I just want to do this as an introduction to put this in perspective. And so that was Chris Bukari Atim. In 1978, he was the acting president of the National Union of Ghana Students, and at that time, as a first-year student, I was the person who used to go on, around the campuses on his behalf, distributing documents and all that. And through that, we built a close relationship before he left the university. Later, I became the first national vice president of the National Union of Ghana Students. We're involved in a lot of problems where we mobilized for the rights of students, and I also fell out with the university authorities by 1981. But let's go back to 1979. The first attempt was 1979. But in 1977, just before I entered university, the National Union of Ghana Students had mobilized the whole country against the Supreme Military Council regime and organized a massive demonstration which led to the closure of the universities. That's 13th,
that was the 13th
May 1977. So that became a National Student Day, and the week including 13th May now became the Aluta Week. So on the second anniversary of that demonstration, and during that Aluta Week, which was called Aluta 2, Rawlings Gate crashed on the celebrations because of the mood on the universities and the fact that the students can easily come out if there is anything against the military regime, and attempted an uprising on May 15, 1979. He failed, and he was put to trial. And during the trial, he boldly stood up and said that they should forget about his men and that he should be held responsible, which made a lot of people see that this was a bold officer. The other thing which he might have known that was an advantage was that he had been associated with a group inside the barracks called the Free Africa Movement. And as he was being tried, after his sentence, the whole of the Free Africa Movement will also be brought to trial. So the Free Africa Movement had nothing to lose if they attempted anything, because if they do not do anything after Rawlings' trial, they will all be tried and they will all be killed. So this is why the people in the Free African Movement were ready to fight till the last to his release on June 4, 1979. In fact, it's a publication by the AFRC under his own chairmanship, which gives a whole story about how June 4 happened. I'll make that available to ROAPE.
Yeah, good idea. So can you take us from his release to the second coup, revolution as it was called?
Yeah.
He was very much regarded during that time as a figure of the left. In some ways, a head of the military coup and Burkinabe revolution of 1983 in Burkina Faso.
Yes. After Rawlings handed over, actually during the June 4 period, the Armed Forces Revolutionary Council was seen as a progressive regime. So the student movement also built a close relationship with the regime, and left-wing forces all built close relations with the regime.
This is after 81.
Yeah, I'm just bringing us to 81. Yeah. So that's after 1979. So during that period, he visited the university campuses and the new left organizations which were emerging build relations with him. In the process, one group was formed with the name June 4 Movement. In fact, some people cautioned them when they took this name, because people were saying that if you don't take care, the AFRC will come and see the movement as its movement. And some people said that the June 4th seems to be some unfinished business. So using that name could also help mobilize people for progressive change. Later, the June 4th movement people even went for Rawlings to be invited him to be in the organization. And in 1981, that was the year that he became visibly part of them. Not more than a year, it wasn't even a year after that he planned a coup, because he immediately used it. So in 1981, Rawlings became the chair of the June 4th movement. And in the rally which he addressed, which is also something that many people outside Ghana will not know, he attacked Nkrumah and actually said that Nkrumah, the person who overthrew Nkrumah, Kotoka, is the hero of the Ghanaian people's liberation, and that is his hero. And in fact, this should have sent warning signs to the left. But sections of the left said, no, Rawlings is just learning, and that he's been involved in study and they will be able to have influence. In fact, this led even to a split in the left, because some forces said that from their knowledge of Rawlings being anti-communist and what he has said publicly, there is no way that Rawlings can champion a cause in the interest of the masses of the people, which would be a progressive cause. And those who believed that they could influence Rawlings associated with him, and actually some helped him plot to overthrow the constitutional regime of Hila Liman on 31st December 1981. In fact, I'm being now told by my friends who were involved in the plot that But even by the D-Day, 31st December, they had seen signs that they had got themselves into a mess. And that Rawlins had his own network of forces that after the D-Day, he would fall on to neutralize the left.
God. So can you take me from 1982 to your arrest in 83 and then your exile? So it's quite a long period, but if you can take us through that
yeah,
quite
I'll try
quickly.
and be brief, yes. But I got involved because Chris Bukari Atim, who was my comrade in the university, got involved.
And he was?
He was now the head of the defense committees and a member of the ruling council and the person who even wrote the coup speech. So he had become the national coordinator of defense committees, and he appointed me the regional coordinator of defense committees. Also because I used to do some work in mobilizing workers committees before the coup occurred. And during the time of the regime, there seemed to be what I'll call two factions of the regime. The ministers, the PNDC secretaries, were dominated by right-wing forces. And so the defense committees coordinators were picked from and deputy ministers from the progressive forces. And so it was an uneasy relationship. And I think that things came to a head when the IMF and World Bank came in and the IMF and World Bank discussions started. The defense committees were now being used as the mobilization units for a critique of the IMF and World Bank involvement, while the PNDC secretaries, the ministers, and the military bureaucracy were on the side of the IMF's the conditions the IMF and the World Bank will impose. And however, in the middle of that, another strange thing happened. 3 judges and a retired military officer were killed. And it seemed that forces close to the PNDC were involved, and the PNDC was on the attack. And as it was on the attack, the radical forces are the forces that you depend on when you want to mobilize to resist attack. So there was a cabinet reshuffle at the end of about a month after the death of the military officers, of the judges and military officers, and which led to left-wing forces being brought into cabinet positions, ministerial positions, including in my region, where a left-wing force became the regional minister, the PNDC secretary.
And the PNDC was the ruling council.
Yeah, the Provincial National Defense Council was the ruling council, chaired by Rawlins. So at the same time, whilst the whole confusion of the IMF and World Bank was going on, this mess had come up. Maybe the mess delayed the attack on the left. But after things seem to have been cooled down, the IMF and the World Bank problem was also there, with other disagreements which have been simmering since the success of the coup. On 28th October, details which I didn't know now until my exile days, on 28th October, Rawlins and the left wing of the council had actually come to a situation which they didn't see how they could ever work together. And so like Emmanuel Hansen will put it in his book, it was left for the two forces to organize to attack. So
This is 1982.
1982, October 20, 1982. So in fact, the council had died and Rawlins had become his own council, and as far as he was concerned, he had nothing to do with those other forces anymore. In fact, The leader within that, to the left, and the leader of the defense committee was my comrade Chris Bukari Atim. In fact, having been in university with him and in the same faculty with him and being in the same study collective with him, I was directly seen as his representative on the ground in Rawlings' home region. And if you followed African politics a bit, you see how people use region and ethnicity in mobilizing for their support. In fact, it meant that I was the main obstacle for Rawlings mobilizing our ethnic group and our region in support of his cause at the time that he had declared war. Being the main obstacle, there's only one thing: either I'm put in detention or I'm killed. And because I have to be moved out for things to be adjusted in favor of Rawlings and forces of his kind. In fact, I sacrificed a lot to be involved in the Rawlings region. As I pointed out to you, I was not anybody who has ever been close to Rawlings. And my father was even from the CPP side, and the CPP establishment forces, the Convention People's Party, that's Nkrumah's party, the establishment forces were the government which we have overthrown, the Provisional National Party, the People's National Party. And so my father was imprisoned immediately the coup succeeded. For the first defense committee I inaugurated in the police station where my father was detained behind me whilst I was inaugurating the police defense committee, thinking that we were sacrificing for common good. Now I had to be in prison for my father, who had been released, now to go around the PNDC officials begging for my release. And he started teaching me a few lessons about life since then.
Can you explain the events leading up, as briefly as possible, we've only got a couple of minutes, leading up to your imprisonment, and then the events in July, June 1983. June 19th, 83.
Yes.
Which was a coup attempt against the Rawlings regime.
Yes. You see, when the split occurred in the PNDC, the arrested military men who were close to the left, there was a right-wing coup which was directed at all of us, including ourselves and Rawlings. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but I have to make this point. In fact, when I was detained, the third accused in that coup attempt was in the same cell with me, and he told other people detained that, in fact, I was the first person to be killed by their coup if they had succeeded, and it was strange that I was in as one of the suspects of the coup which was going to shoot me, and that I was the number one person to be shot in the Volta region if the coup had succeeded. And the day after the coup, Rawlings took advantage, since he was looking for opportunity to deal with the left, he took advantage of attacking the left. So we were in the house of the Minister for Youth and Sports, which was one of the left forces among the ministers. Rawlings came to his house with a helicopter full of soldiers, got all of us, including the chairman of the public tribunal, on our knees at gunpoint, and then arrested the cadre responsible for the police defense committees and the deputy editor of the Revolutionary Banner, which was the person or the newspaper of the June 4th movement. Or that time, the June 4th movement, the People's Revolutionary League of Ghana had united, so the United Front paper, and then got them detained. I returned to my region, Volta region, and then after a period of time, there was a day, that was 7th December 1982, we have arranged to have a seminar, so conference on the IMF and the World Bank program, starting the following day. A day before the conference started, I was arrested. And within that, Chris Atim also resigned, left the country. During the period that we were being arrested, some of the progressive soldiers escaped into exile. So when they organized from Lome on 19 June 1983, infiltrated into the country, got contacts in the various prisons, and organized this jailbreak. And as part of the jailbreak, they went to the broadcasting, gave a speech, left the tape recording in the broadcasting so that it was playing, whilst they continued breaking into other prisons and
to release
comrades. And the regime announced that anybody who was seen escaping should be shot on sight. Some of our people were caught. They were shot on sight, including a close friend of mine who were arrested together, Kwame Ajima, who was shot. And everybody had to find their own way in how to escape from the country. It took me 11 days, on 30th June 1983, to escape through Jassikine into the Republic of Togo.
And then, just for viewers of ROAPE.net and this video, you were in exile. You did not return. You were not able to return to Ghana until 2009.
Yes.
And you spent a period of time on a scholarship studying for a PhD in Czechoslovakia.
Oh, actually, I studied for the masters in Czechoslovakia up to 1989. In 1989, I was admitted for a PhD, but that was the year that the communist regimes collapsed, 1989. So I couldn't start the PhD, and I came to Britain, where I sought asylum, where I've been in exile since then.
And very, very briefly, and we've already touched on this when the film hasn't been rolling, the confusion of being on the run from a so-called leftist government has obviously been something which has shaped your politics. What lessons do you draw from the role of the military in so-called progressive movements for change on the continent? As quickly as we can.
Yes, I'll try to be very brief. There are two things I've learned here. First one, about left-oriented regimes. The fact is that the character of the state is not changed by it being merely occupied by left-wing forces. So what had happened is that when left-wing forces occupy the state's character rather influences them, and there becomes a conflict between them and the left organization. On the international scene, since the left-wing oriented regimes are weaker internationally, they are also hungry for solidarity and friends. So they are hungry to get whatever friends they have. So our friends who have entered the state structure and have been taken over by the state now becomes state friends of left-wing oriented states around the world. So it becomes very difficult for the movement to be able to get solidarity. The other one about the military, I think the neo-colonial army is just part of the neo-colonial state. So in saying that the state, which is capitalist oriented, the army is an extension of the neo-colonial capitalist state. And so the forces will become progressive in the army whenever they even engage in a project, even the most progressive like Sankara and co. It ends up, and again, being neutralized by the capitalist state within which the project is being carried. And so it is necessary for us to soberly reflect on some of these experiences and not rush on to support such initiatives when they come up, because it will by all means lead to a crisis in the long run, because the state structure remains what it has always been, and that there's no way in which we will neutralize or change it overnight because our persons have gone into it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for the interview, Explo.
Yes. You're most welcome. I think it's a great opportunity to have this start.